So I'm very pleased to have Claire, our secular Quranist, agnostic person, a good old friend of mine for many years, and we're going to be talking about the big problem of why bother getting married. My usual format is I play a short YouTube short from a popular YouTube influencer, in this particular case, uh, the desirable truth, somebody who goes uh, in the streets of Miami, I think it is, somewhere in America, where really affluent, rich people who don't seem to care much about marriage. They seem to care more about one night stands and stuff. So he talks to those kind of people. And I think in some ways they represent the extreme end of the problem we face in the West, that people really don't care about marriage anymore. Um, so, hello, Claire. I should give you a chance to say hello at least before we run into
Hello,
video.
everyone.
Thank you very much for being here. Claire does seem to somehow attract lots of comments, even hate watchers, as she called them. I don't know. So please do comment, hate comment, or whatever comment. Yep, we're up to a conversation with all people from different backgrounds. So let's go for it.
What's your age?
57.
Are you single?
Yes.
Have you ever proposed to a woman before?
Yes.
How did that turn out for you?
A marriage and 2 children.
And then divorce.
And then divorce. Yes.
How long was your marriage with your ex-wife?
I can't actually hear
About
it.
20 years.
How do you go?
Oh, you can't hear it? Let me
I
make
can't
sure.
hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me? You can't hear me at all? Let me check my mic and everything. Ooh, has
I
it
think
gone?
you can hear me because my
Yeah, I can hear you. Yes, I
thing
can
is
hear
pulsating.
you. Yeah.
Should I just shut up?
I can hear you. Poor Claire's having some technical problems today. I'll play the video and then let's see what can you. 1 second. Let me WhatsApp you. I can hear you, but let's play the video and hopefully somehow can you join in again? Maybe I'll. If you can't hear me, can you?
Okay, now I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Great. Okay, cool. Okay, so let's carry on with the video.
From having a whole family life to coming back out into the world as a single man?
There's a thing I refer to as the ladder of love. People walk up the ladder of love when they're beginning a relationship. They say, oh, I really like you. I'll do this for you. The next person says, oh, well, if you'll do that for me, then I'll do this for you. Oh, well, if you'll do that for me, then I'll do this for you. If you'll do this for me. Well, I'm not going to do that for you. Oh, well, then I'm not going to do this for you. And then I'm not going to do this for you. And then they walk down the ladder of love. And at some point, people reduce themselves to the passion and the love and that chemistry, that oxytocin, that thing that really draws you together. It begins to die. And if you don't have the basis for the relationship things that you love to do together, then eventually you grow apart and you either become people who don't like each other, or you do what we did. You become like a brother and a sister.
Do you see yourself getting married to a woman again, or is it more of just a life partner thing from this point going forward?
So I haven't married a second time, but I'm looking for a wife.
Why even take that risk?
There comes a point in your life when you start asking yourself the question, what am I going to do for the time that I have left? And that's when you start viewing life very differently. You realize that there's a number of days you have left to live, but you want to decide how to make those days really count. I'm not thinking anymore about how to build an empire because I did that. And so when you reach that point in your life, you say to yourself, what do I want to do? How do I want to give back? Who do I want to teach? Who do I want to mentor? What do I want to leave as my legacy? And then you say to yourself, who do I want to do that with?
What's your
Okay, Claire, is your microphone working? Can you hear me? Oh. Okay.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Cool. So I just want to summarize some ideas that he was putting forward. He was saying things like this man who got divorced, that just making money is not enough for him. And I think maybe his perspective, being an older person, having made money, he realized that's not enough. He has a sense that he wants to share his journey in life with somebody, rather than just do it alone. And he didn't want life just to be transaction of money and things like that. And he wants an idea that, especially when you get older, you start thinking about your legacy. What's it all about? Was it worth doing all this effort just to make money? Because you're going to be dead soon. You can't take that money with you. So, like, what's the point? What's the legacy? And I suppose one way of having a legacy is having children that you're proud of. And there's so many other things that he said that are interesting, like marriage is a sort of a ladder of transactions. Like, I do this for you, you do this for me. I'm not sure if I totally agree with that, but I agree with it to some extent. Like, you have responsibilities, but I think when it becomes transactional, I think it becomes a bit precarious because, like he said,
No,
yeah. What do you think?
I think it's crazy that like they say transactional as if it were a bad word. It's like, well, what's the point of it then? If it doesn't serve anybody any purpose, why would you be in it? So
No, I
it's
agree
like,
that you should
well,
have.
we have the marriage partners have certain duties and
Yeah.
certain objectives, and if we don't agree on that, then obviously they're gone into it for the wrong reasons, and that's why they're not happy. And he doesn't even say why he got divorced, right?
Well, they say he said
Maybe you
something
don't think
interesting.
it matters. You don't think it
No,
matters.
he did say something actually. He said that they stop doing things for each other, and also they become like a brother-sister relationship, which is really
Oh
interesting.
dear. Oh dear.
Yeah,
I
go
mean,
for it. Tell
it's
me.
just such a stupid reason, right? What you just think? Oh, I don't quite fancy them anymore. Oh, well, better move out. I mean, is that what it means? I just don't
Mm,
feel it anymore. Therefore, I'm out of this marriage. What about the children? Who gives a damn? I mean, obviously they're not having the right idea about marriage, right? It's not
yeah,
fun and games, is it?
yeah. And if he wants legacy, he has to think a bit deeper than just, I know, fun and games, as he put it.
Well, I mean, the thing is, we
Yeah.
don't know who initiated the divorce, do we?
Let's
Do
say
we?
he makes it sound as if it was amicable, that because he said we're both brother and sister. We became a sort of brother and sister relationship. So I think both ways it died out. And I think it died out after, when there was nothing else. So they stopped doing things for each other. And already the sexual or excitement part of it had died
Well, I
out.
mean, he's
Yeah.
not saying who'd initiated the divorce. I mean, I suspect it was his wife, and he's just, thinking, oh, it's just normal, you don't feel it anymore, so you walk out of the marriage, and this perpetuates this myth that it is acceptable to do that. Right? I
Cool. So let
mean,
me ask
usually you think you must really hate your spouse to do this to yourself and to your children. I mean, you're not just walking out of your marriage; you're walking out of your home and your children and your neighborhood and your common friends. So, there's a lot that's not being explained.
I think you make some really good points. I agree with you. I think the thing that there was a bit of confusion. I do believe we should have responsibilities, but it shouldn't be like after the fact. Like after you marry, then you say, "Okay, what am I going to do for you?" And then you do something for me. It's like it should be laid out beforehand. I think there's a bit of a difference, or
Well,
maybe it's just a.
don't Muslims have a marriage contract called the nikah?
Yeah, it's not so much a contract to say, because the Quran says what you should do, and it's just kind of really simple. I think, from what I understand, is like the woman should be obedient and take care of the man's property and belongings, including the children, essentially. And the man should go and work and be kind and be a good leader. I'm not sure. That's one verse. There's probably lots of other things but
Well, protect and provide, I think,
protect and
is,
provide. Yeah,
I mean, kind of universal, right?
yeah. So yeah, very natural contract, or at least a traditional contract. Yeah. So let me ask you questions. Actually, let's put it this way, because sometimes I talk too much, and I've got you. You make some interesting points. But I'm not sure what your answer would be to this. That he says he fell out of, let's say he fell out of love, and his wife fell out of love, and isn't that sexual energy important? I've got my own answer, but I'm interested about how you would explain it or what you would say.
Well, I mean, there are all kinds of ways that you can, if you really cared, like, oh, let's make sex better, marital counseling, what marital aids, the usual sort of thing. So, you could, if you cared, try and make it better. And obviously, if you cared about each other, then it wouldn't be, no sex anymore. I'm out of here. Surely there's going to be a bit of accommodation, like that the woman is not always available to the man for, and I think the Quran says give her a week off when she's having her period, something like
Oh yeah,
that. And
yeah.
I mean, the point about a marriage is that both parties have right to have sex and children with each other. And in fact, in Christianity, you can annul your marriage and say, well, we've never had sex, or my spouse can't have children, and I have the right to pretend I never was married to this person and move on. So, I mean, basically, marriage is for sex and children, and if people don't really understand that, then that they're going to be very disappointed.
Right, yeah. So one question I could ask is, what happens if one person decides to stop having sex because they don't feel like it? And I guess one of the answers would be you shouldn't have got married in the first place because you didn't realize the contract, you didn't understand the contract. Well, is that something you would say, or how would you answer it?
Well, I would say marriage is for legitimate children, and obviously you can't have children without having sex. And um, sorry, what was your question again? Sorry, I forgot.
So my question is, what happens if one person stops feeling like having sex, which is often women after they have children,
Well, oh yes,
or Western women?
I think it should be, understood that both parties have a right to have sex with each other, and I suppose you or others might think it's a bit regimented to say,
No?
how many times am I, allowed to have sex,
Yeah, yeah. I'm
in
happy. I think
in a
it.
month or a week, and
Yeah,
I
yeah. I
think.
think you should have a schedule. Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not against that at
or
all.
at least an agreed number of times, and most people seem to think it's reasonable to expect it once a week.
Shall I came across a really interesting video which talked about people masturbating, and they said they have to have a healthy. Oh, was it something gland? Do you know the gland where I think like sperm is made, begins with P, whatever, like that part of your body, right? If you want a healthy body, essentially, you have to masturbate 21 times in a month, which correlates with sex every day, unless your wife's on the period. What do you think about that?
Well, that seems a bit excessive. I mean, I
I'm
think
just saying, it seems to be the natural way. I often, like, for example, I remember a report from, what's it called? Cancer Research UK. And they had a report that says if you don't have more than 2 children, your risk of breast cancer is much higher. So that told me there's a natural feedback that said you should have more than 2 children, which kind of makes sense because you want to be going beyond replacement rate. So I think, do you
well,
think,
I know women who
yeah,
have had
go on.
breast cancer, and they certainly had more than 2 children.
Hmm.
I guess that there's no hard and fast rule, but the point is that I think whether you're Muslim or not, I think people can agree that once a week is reasonable.
Why? Where did that number come from? I'm not saying it's wrong, but why?
Because
What do you think the Quran says? And
there
what
is a verse
hadith?
that says women are your fields and you must plow them often, right? But I
Hmm.
mean, how often does one plow one's fields? Once a year, right? So I mean, there's obviously a metaphor. I know you're looking a bit shocked, but I think if you asked a range of opinions, and I have done, and the general consensus is like, once a week is not a lot, but it seems reasonable.
Okay.
And
Did
also
you
the
ask
idea is
women or
that
men or both? Did they both agree? I'll be surprised if both men and women agree because they have different sex drives.
yeah, exactly. So once a week it seems, the common ground between men and women. It's sort of like where women might say that that's as often as I can put up with it, and men might say that that's as infrequent as I can put up with.
So my
It's like,
understanding.
maybe, at the weekend, on a
So
Saturday or a Sunday or something like that. It's like, yeah, I mean, maybe during a weekday, you might not be in the mood. But at the
mm.
weekend, there is this idea that it will tend to happen at the weekend.
Okay, yeah. My understanding is just whenever the man wants it. There's a hadith that makes that very clear that says that even if a woman is cooking her food and a man asks her for something. Sometimes in Islam they make it a bit vague just to be polite. Then she should agree. So basically, it's whenever the man
I
wants
know
it, and
it's your favorite hadith, but
yeah,
I think maybe
I'm just
maybe
no, it's not
women
about
might not
me. I'm just
agree.
saying practically, what does Islam teach? Is it practical? And
Well,
I
it's in the
think, yeah.
hadith, right? So it's
So,
not
and there's a
reliable.
Quran that in the Quran it says something along the lines of men should go onto their women, like you have sex with women as they like. So let me see.
But then there's also a verse that says, "Leave them alone when they're having their period."
Oh yeah, but that's like without when they
Okay, so
like,
you're saying at
yeah.
least 21
As,
times a month,
I think that's
which,
actually I
which
like to go by biology and statistics and what action rather than what people feel. Do you know what I mean? Because it could be
well,
just
I
like a
think your
modern
wife
thing.
might, have something to do with it, or
Yeah.
unless you are actually wanting to. Well, in the UK, there is a concept of marital rape.
Hmm.
So I'm certainly not going to say I'm going to abolish it under secular Quranism. I would say that there should be a kind of agreed number of times, and I would say, okay, once a week, or four times a month, and anything extra could be construed as marital rape unless specifically agreed to.
Okay.
Which might be a problem, for some men, but it's just something worth thinking about, right? And
Hmm.
and as people get older, they might not have the urge to want it so often, or might say, actually, I'd like to give it a miss this week, or something, right?
Hmm.
And of course, over time, people can just sort of naturally agree to, you know, come to their own arrangement about it, right?
Hmm.
So, but I mean, I see that men and women are not going to agree about that, and that's why I say once a week is kind of often enough for the man and not too often for the woman. Because I mean,
Hmm.
a man might say, well, why did I marry you for if it's only once a month, or once every 2 months or something, right? But I mean, it just has to sound reasonable, I think.
Hmm.
But I
Okay.
mean, you saying, that she has to drop everything to have sex with you is, possibly not considered reasonable by many women, Muslim or not.
Okay. Sure. Okay. I would say I'll give the reasoning because I don't want to just stick on that one aspect of things, but I think it's very important. Um, the reason is women naturally don't want to have sex, but from what I understand, they like to have sex when they have been aroused or put into that position. So it's like, oh, when they start to get into that situation, then they start wanting to have sex. So I think it's possible, is what I'm saying, and I think it's bearing in mind that men want to have sex far more than women do. It should be. I think it makes sense that women are told that their natural urges to initiate sex is far lower rate than men. So try to take on board any moves, let's say, from their husbands. Just be self-aware and don't make excuses like, oh, I'm busy. I'm washing my hair, I'm doing whatever. There's always endless excuses. So I think it's a practical, very unpopular teaching, but I think it'll become more and more popular when we realize how sexless marriages are and how unhappy so many men are. So I think that even though it's not popular and maybe not popular in the Western mindset, and maybe it was kind of normal in traditional families like hundreds of years ago, when women knew that at least they should just do that. When the husband comes back and says, I want some, just do it. And it wasn't a big deal. But nowadays, like feminist ideas have crept in. It's like, I don't feel like it and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so I'll stick to what I think over there, but on that. And I do think the Quran essentially, I mean, there's a definite hadith about it, and it's a quite a well-known accepted hadith. And the Quran suggests the same thing as far as I'm concerned, but I couldn't quite find it. But I'll post it in the comments afterwards if I find it. So I think I want to go to one of the main issues. What is the point of marriage? I mean, I've got a couple of answers. I've put my answer as the Muslim answer in the document in the description below. Essentially, the Quran says men and women are garments of each other, and there are three aspects of garments. Well, first of all, it's a beautiful garment. So it's a sense of protection. So protection, but women actually protect men from their own sexual urges, like going to prostitutes, going to pornography, and so many other things. And even, I would say, going to like all sorts of risky behavior. Like if you have sex regularly, your testosterone levels will be lower, and you won't gamble your money away. You won't do stupid things that harm you and therefore harm your family and stuff like that. And then, of course, men protect in a normal traditional way, but I think men protect women in so many ways. The Quran always talks about women shouldn't go traveling by themselves and stuff like that, because it's very easy to take advantage of women. What was it? And they give each other comfort, you could say sexually or something. And finally, what was the other thing I listed? Beautifies. So like you become a grown-up human being only when you're married, and that's supported by the hadith, the saying of Prophet Muhammad, that essentially marriage is half of faith. Like you don't properly develop. You're a man child, or you're undeveloped woman, or a selfish woman when you're not married. But when you are married, you actually develop into a beautiful person. Children themselves are beautiful, and I love being in Jordan because it's a family-oriented society. So those are three essential elements of why we should marry. What are your ideas about why we should marry?
Well, we should certainly marry if we want to become parents, because we are rearing, parenting the next generation. With regard to marriage and its effect on men, I think men just become more civilized when they're married, and they take fewer risks and behave better. It's only when they're bachelors, looking for I guess women and booty, that makes them behave badly. But once they have a sense of their responsibilities because they have children and a wife to support, then they will just naturally want to behave better, because they don't want to be considered a man who has a failed marriage or has not been able to fulfill his responsibilities.
But a lot of people don't care about responsibilities. But I would like to kind of convince men to get married, that they just become more complete people. So, for example, married men make more money. Have you heard of that one?
Well, yes, but only if they have a supportive wife. I mean, there have been statistics showing that men with a stay-at-home wife will be more successful than a man with a working wife. And,
Wow.
I mean, I suppose the truth of the matter is that everything needs to be rearranged so that a man can earn a family wage. Because if he cannot, then his ability to support a woman and, in fact, impress a woman is considerably lessened. So, you might have a man and a woman earning roughly the same, but then the woman wouldn't really quite respect him. And I guess, women will only put up with rubbish from men if the man earns significantly more than she does, because otherwise she'll say, well, I don't have to put up with this,
Yeah, so I would say I've never heard the statistics, but it totally makes sense from my experience. Where if you've got a stay-at-home wife, you earn a lot more. I've seen that, even within my family, because even within amongst Muslims, they're kind of becoming like, oh, I want to go out to work and all this kind of stuff. That kind of stuff is becoming more popular. So it totally makes sense from a man's point of view. You want somebody who can cook the food. You don't have to buy frozen food. There's so many small and important things that need to be done, and you can only do them if you're a housewife. You're basically not taking care of children if you're not a housewife. It's like I don't see it working, because being a mother is a full-time job. So that's a really interesting statistic that you put forward. So what was the other point you made? So yeah. Anyway, I agree with that, and I forgot the other point I was going to make.
Well, I think maybe about the family wage.
Oh yes, exactly. Thank you for reminding me. So I've heard this theory that the reason, to enable men to earn a family wage. So people are saying the salaries people earn nowadays are not enough to live on. Therefore, you have to have both husband and wife working. And there was a theory that somebody came up with, which is, and I think it makes a lot of sense to me, that by having women in the labor force, they just because of how supply and demand works, they actually halve the cost of labor. So basically what they're saying is that having women who are half the population, join the workforce, they're devaluing labor. And it really makes sense to me, because women usually do low skilled jobs, like the jobs. But if they weren't there, what would happen is those jobs would be automated. And then you would just have high level jobs instead, and people get paid more. So that's I think that kind of makes a lot of sense to me, that if you want, a livable wage, have women stop working. There might be some situations, I think, like having women gynecologists and I don't know, a few jobs like that. But we should drastically reduce the amount of women in the labor force, and they
Yeah,
hate
because
their
they have
work mostly.
important work to do in the home,
Yeah.
such as look after the children, and also to make men want to be married fathers. I mean, that's really the role of women. If men are supposed to, protect and provide, then it's the role of women to make them want to do it. Otherwise,
Yeah.
we'll just check out and be gay.
Yeah, and men will feel like, why are we doing all our side of the, doing the protect and provide, and we get nothing out of it? Like, you're not going to get regular sex from somebody who's really tired after work. Like, if your wife is working, far less opportunity for that. Like, you're not going to enjoy marriage, probably. That's my
Yes, and of
opinion.
course, working mothers have fewer children than stay-at-home mums, right? That's a
Yeah.
given. That's undeniable. So,
Have you seen a
I thought,
statistic? Because that's really interesting, because a lot of people say, oh, we need two salaries to support the children. But you're saying you can have one salary and you're going to end up having more children. And I think there's generally a statistic that poorer people tend to have more children. But then people like, what's his name, David will say, like, they'll be less educated and they won't be properly raised up. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
well, I mean, there's actually there's a lot of low skilled work that still needs to be done, right? a lot of, Deliveroo and, harvesting crops, the low skilled work. So, we can't all be university graduates, turning our noses up at, working in shops and factories and becoming agricultural workers. So, the working classes are important. And, everybody just thinks, oh, I just want an office job and, I want to be a graduate. So, of course, they're not prepared to do all that work. And that's why, the government is faced with this demand for labor. It's like, so I think there are a lot of problems that are systemic. So, because of the welfare trap caused by the welfare state, fewer indigenous people are prepared to do the work that needs to be done. So, business organizations say, look, we do need the labor, or, cattle won't be slaughtered, crops won't be harvested, and, takeaway food won't be delivered, and whatever it is that is considered to be an essential service. So, and I mean, how are you going to reduce the working class, other than by sexual reproduction? And how are you going to parent them except with two parents? Because, obviously, a one parent family is not going to work very well. In fact, even a nuclear family isn't going to work very well, because then the children won't be sufficiently socialized, and they need, cousins and aunts and uncles and nieces and nephews and all that kind of thing to, make the whole thing work. So, unfortunately, we've lost even this idea of how things are supposed to work. And
Yeah.
the people who complain about immigration don't even want these things. They don't want, more stable marriages and whatever. And I think it's because a lot of these men say, I want to have sex, but I don't want a wife, and I certainly don't want to support a family. But I will complain about Muslims and immigrants, and, and blame Jews for it, maybe. So this is a problem. I think, they don't even want the cure. And if you say it's Sharia, then they'll just run away, I guess.
Very interesting. Yeah, those are the people who are complaining about Muslims coming back to the country. They're the ones who say, we want to bring back British values, but they can't pin down what those British values are. And I'd hoped those British values would be having children, but that's not what they want. I mean, you don't hear them say, we want to have children, we want to do this. They just complain that Muslims are having too many children.
Well, exactly. So, you will find that all the people who support anti-immigration parties are bachelors.
Ah, interesting.
They're mostly bachelors, and unmarriageable bachelors at that. So,
I mean, actually, it doesn't surprise me.
yeah.
Because if you look at the people who are like, is Tony Robinson married?
Yes, I believe he has children.
Oh, okay. Well, he's done all right. Okay, but like if you look at I mean, this is probably just reading a book from its cover, but like if you look at the people who are protesting, they don't really look like they're employed or particularly grown up. They're just like the conversations are really low level. And I don't want to just insult them, but it doesn't actually surprise me, like you say, that the people who are anti-immigration are not the kind of people who are married. They're just frustrated and they're not doing very well in their lives. So they're not really they don't have solutions. So I totally agree with you. Yeah.
Well, I mean, they want things like, well, they want to turn back time, and of course it's impossible, really. I mean, the only thing we can do is admit our mistakes and try and correct them, instead of, playing the blame game, which is what they want to do. Because, if they don't play the blame game, they have to admit that they were wrong. And then they have to, if they're still marriageable and not too old, they will have to consider the horror of trying to find a spouse and, starting a family. And this also needs changes in the economy, because it would also mean, the abolition of equal pay. Right, because you can't have equal pay and still have a family wage payable to married fathers.
Interesting. Yeah, I can imagine if you have equal pay,
Or
you do
maternity leave, even.
Yeah, and women get preferential treatment because they get longer paternity. I mean, do you say paternity leave or maternity leave?
Well, now they have paternity leave, and this would have the effect of making Western labour even less competitive, right?
Mm,
Because they've been given maternity leave, and then men say, "Well, hey, what about us, fathers?"
mm.
And so then they've given paternity leave to fathers, and of course they stay home and take it as holiday, and this would make
So
Western labour even less competitive.
you would argue that men should not have paternity leave, and I would agree with you. I didn't ever
Yes.
take paternity leave. I always worked per hour, so it's up to me how much I worked, and I basically worked all the time, because my wife would take care of the children. That was her job, and I would come between shifts or whatever it is when I was not teaching, and there was plenty of time to help out. And I agree with your other point, continuing with this, is that you need an extended family. You need uncles, whatever. You can't just have the nuclear family. It's not enough.
Yeah, because sometimes you need to go away somewhere as a couple, and you have to leave the kid somewhere, and it can't just be the babysitter. So yes, so all these things need to be considered properly, and nobody will actually think of the practicalities of the thing, except people who are already married and complaining how difficult and impossible it is. Um, um, and taxes are high, and it's like, yes, taxes are high because of the consequences of usury, and property prices are unaffordable because if you have years of easy money and low interest rates, and people just expect you to borrow lots of money and buy your house in that way. And now the whole thing is distorted and about to collapse, sadly. But
Yeah, you make a really interesting a point about taxes being too high. So my brother, one of my younger brothers, he earns more than double what I earn technically, but his tax rate is 40%. So he's basically on. I don't want to say too many things about it. I don't say which brother and all that kind of stuff, but basically he's usually on minus, and I'm living in Jordan, and life is so easy that I'm always saving all the time, and life is, yeah. So, and I would say, what's the point I'm trying to make? I think in societies where they depend on interest, everything becomes really expensive. Yeah, the only things that are really expensive here are cars. And the reason why cars are really expensive is, first of all, the government puts 300% tax for some reason on cars, but also people are borrowing money to buy cars, so that increases the cost of cars. But you could buy a mansion, you buy your own land, design your own house for 50,000 quid, 50,000 pounds. I don't think you could do that. When I talk about making a mansion, like a 10-bedroom house. So, and
wow.
you're saving loads more money. Even like the person I'm living, my rent here is little over £100, and I live in a mansion built by, let's say, a very average working class electrician. That's his job.
Mhm.
And he's got like a huge house, and he's got like how many kids? 6 kids, I think. I can't remember.
Hmm.
5 kids. That's my wife just corrected me. So yeah, that's more than most people that I know in England in terms of kids.
Yeah, I mean, if they make it so impossible for anyone to start a family, or even find a woman prepared to um, marry, then it's going to have a knock-on effect on the economy, because your labor cost is also part of your fixed cost of the manufacture of any product or service. So they don't think about that, because if you if your labor costs are impossibly high, then things will get very expensive.
Yeah, I should clarify, because I sometimes explain things in my own head, and you probably know that my brothers and family are mostly in London, and I'm here in Jordan in the Middle East. So the cost of living in London is just impossibly high. It's insane. And the
Mm.
quality of life is terrible. The food quality is terrible, and you have to pay loads of money for it. Rent is, oh, just ridiculous. And my brother, just to labor the point, like, he's not living in a mansion. He's living in a tiny house that's not big enough, in a flat, a council house, even though he earns loads of money. And even that's not enough. Do you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah,
really
40% is ridiculous, right? But the thing is, back to my pet topic of secular Quranism, which is that, there is an Islamic rate of tax. It's 20%. Or a fifth. I mean, it could be argued to be a flat rate income tax of 20%, and this would actually, completely disarm all the Islamophobes if you offer them a flat rate income tax. And this would actually attract, the wealthy people,
I
who
thought it
think
was
that,
way lower than that.
hmm?
I'm gonna YouTube. I'm not YouTube. I'm gonna ask AI. But yeah, you carry on. I'm just gonna check out because I thought it's like 2% or 2.5%.
Oh,
But yeah.
that's zakat,
Oh
which is
yeah,
in the hadith anyway. I'm talking about
yeah.
khums, khums.
Okay, you tell me about it because I don't know about that.
Yeah.
What is
So basically, I mean, it actually says it's the Muslims are supposed to give a fifth of their booty, right? But I mean, it can be said to be, well, Muhammad's no longer around, but Muslims still earn money, and they should give 20% of it to the state for for widows and orphans and wayfarers and blah blah blah. I forget which verse that was, but
Okay. Okay, go on, carry on, go on, and then I'll
yeah, so
say what
if
I
you say
think.
20% flat rate income tax, I think it will be attractive to a lot of people, not just the super rich. Because they think, wow, that's quite a lot less than 40%, right? It would,
Yeah,
make sense to your brother and
yeah.
to lots of people trying to stay middle class.
See, my understanding is there's no other tax other than the zakat. And the zakat is a wealth tax, which is different to an income tax, completely different. I mean, a wealth tax is taxed on income you're not using after 1 year. So basically, the poor don't have to pay tax. If you're living hand to mouth, you don't pay tax.
It's a
That's my
wealth tax.
understanding.
I understand, and
Yeah,
but I suppose that there is this question of, you know, it, if it's a tax, then it's not charity. It's a compulsory charity is in fact a tax kind of thing.
sure. You know, I
So
agree. That's fair enough. Let's call it a compulsory charity. Charity in the sense that it benefits society. That would be, but I didn't know if any other payment people have to give in a Muslim society. So I
I
would
think the
say,
Shias
yeah,
operated in Iran.
okay.
That this 1/5 comes thing, and
Because I know a 1/5. You said booty. Now that is true from what I understand. After a war, 1/5 of the war, what do they call it? Spoils of war. That goes. It goes to the government. The people who won. But that's different to tax.
Well, I mean, it could be interpreted as, well, you're a Muslim, you have a government, surely you need to pay some tax. 20% flat rate income tax is, people are not going to say, oh, it's too high, right? I mean, 20 is a kind of magic number in my view.
Why do you think? Do you think that if the British government never went on wars, endless wars, maybe they wouldn't need so much tax because maybe it doesn't cost so much to lay roads and do the few things and housing shouldn't cost so much money if we both agree it's interest that's you know caused house prices to increase. So they should be really low to make, basic houses for people who can't afford any houses. Like let's call that a basic right. To have a roof over your head and have basic amounts of food. I think all of that can be done really cheaply.
So do I, but you know that the West is over its head in debt, right? That's why
Okay.
taxes keep rising. They keep having to sponsor all these wars, and nobody agrees with them. And at some stage in the future, there will come a collapse because if you keep borrowing, the person you borrow from will eventually come to the conclusion it's like they're never going to pay me back. So even if I say I'm not going to lend you any more money, and then your business will collapse, at least I will have cut my losses, right?
Okay.
Because if your lender thinks you're never going to pay him back, they'll stop lending to you, and then and that is how I guess people become slaves, right? And then they
Hmm.
can't, afford a roof over their head or food in their belly, and then they have to sell their labor just to get a roof over their head and food in their belly. if they don't want to starve, on the streets. But I think, that there's so much in the Quran that could be made into a manifesto that would actually appeal even to Islamophobes. If you say 20 flat rate income tax, they'll go, well, let's have a closer look at what you're proposing. No more endless wars. That would be nice. A family wage, and women behaving like women and men behaving like men, and I think it could be sold quite easily, except that nobody's helping you do that.
Well, yeah. I'm trying to help you right now, but
Yes, thank you.
I think the essential problem is that people just want to complain, but they don't want to change themselves. They don't understand that you can't go, we want British values to be back, and then have no actual values. Do you know what I mean? You gotta commit to something, and people gotta start with that. And I suppose coming back to faith, God, religion, all that kind of stuff is the solution, to start actually having values, and then you can actually get the returns on having values. If you have no values, then you just carry on having the problems you have. I think, why do you, maybe let's turn this into a question. Why do you think people don't realize that you need to have values to be successful?
Well, let's first define values, because, I guess in a liberal society, these liberals would value liberty, right? And if you're an adherent of any of the Abrahamic religions, then you would have to value obedience, right? Obedience to God's laws. And, if you think about all the religions that have been reasonably successful, like the five world religions, the common feature that they have is that they support marriage and the family. And it's only Christianity that, that stopped supporting marriage and family values. And this, I think, is a crucial difference. And although it seems quite obvious to us now, a lot of people are, basically hooked on the culture of sex and drugs and rock and roll and don't want to give it up.
So next week I'm going to be talking to E. Michael Jones, and he wouldn't agree with you to say Christianity, or sometimes he distinguishes Christianity from Catholicism, but whatever. He would not agree with you, and a lot of
Oh, I think he would,
tradition.
because he's written a book
No,
called.
he wouldn't. He wouldn't agree with you that Christianity is not for marriage.
Well, I mean, he would know that Catholics used to have many more children than they do
Yeah.
now. And then he would say, oh, it's a pill, and it was invented by a Jew, and feminism was a creation of Jews. But I think that's crediting Jews, a bit too much, because, I mean, feminism basically works through bribing men with cheaper sex, and marriage is the most expensive form of sex for men, right? It's cheaper to go to a prostitute, cheaper to
No,
buy
actually,
women a few
there's
prezzies every now and then and move on to the next one.
no. I'd say being married is far cheaper than having sex with prostitutes. Having sex with prostitutes is expensive, but also there's and I'm speaking from an Islamic point of view. I think I actually quoted it in the document. It says adultery entails poverty. So basically, having sex with a prostitute is adultery. And generally speaking, what happens is it costs a lot of money to hunt down sex, as it were. If you're not having sex with somebody you're married to, then you have to make a lot of effort, buy them presents, whatever. Your wife won't need presents all the time. That's a weird wife, right? Okay. And your wife is in the same boat as you. She doesn't need you to waste money when you're both trying to save money together. And sex is not a big deal. It's like it just happens. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to go on 10 dates at really expensive restaurants before you can have sex. So I think it's really cheap, much cheaper. And in fact, I would say
But then you have to pay
Yeah.
for the children and the school fees and the mortgage and. But
Oh yeah.
maybe it swings and roundabouts. Maybe, okay, let's say it all costs about the same amount of money. But the thing is, you would have a stable household, and you would feel that you're actually doing something constructive, and maybe you might enjoy family life and watching your children grow and take pleasure in the company of your children, which is, better than just having a series of different women, sharing your bed over the years.
I think that's a really important point I wanted to get back to, that he was trying to make. This guy in the video, he's like, I've made loads of money, but that's not enough. I want to share my life with somebody. So how would you convince people that, I mean, you've already done it in many ways, but you want to add to this idea that just making money and doing it alone and having sex with different strangers all the time is not fulfilling? I mean, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yes, I want to mention Nina Power, who is, well, I guess not known for her liking for Muslims, but she got married. I think it was last year or the year before, and then she wrote in her Substack that um, a marriage is having somebody to remember things with. And I thought that was, really quite profound in that it affirms our identity, that we um, have a long-term relationship with a member of the opposite sex who, will, remember lots of stuff with us if we stay with them a long time. How things were before you married, how you married, and all the adventures you might have had, holidays and children, and whatever. And it affirms your identity in that you have all these shared memories. But if only had a series of women who so you might think, oh, such and such was so important and so significant, but there was nobody else that you're speaking to now who was there at that significant event all those years ago. And so I think it's really quite comforting to have people for a long time, to remember all these things that happened so long ago.
Yeah,
Otherwise
you'd
it will
feel
just seem a
alone, isn't it?
dream.
Like if you couldn't, you feel alone and anxious all the time. If you felt like everybody you knows, they could be gone by next year. Do you know what I mean? And you never talk to them again, which is a common problem. And then you wouldn't have much trust in human beings, I guess. And so you'd be pretty depressed if you have that kind of outlook that you don't want to get married. It's just everything's temporary. It's pretty bleak.
Yeah, and you have nobody to sort of have some common memory with. So, I mean, I do, value my school friends, and I'm still in touch with that we remember these, long dead teachers, and some incident that we were in class wars, or different personalities, and I think even these common memories, even if they seem trivial to most people, it is an affirmation of our identity, and give us our history. And yeah.
Yeah, there's a famous brain psychologist, it's like whatever his name is, doesn't matter. But he said just having somebody to say hello, how are you every day, I don't know, adds many years to your, life and stuff like that. I mean, that's just a rough idea, but the point is that people might think, oh, they're just small things, small memories, small shared ideas, but actually the small things are the big things. Like just having tons of money is not good enough. You actually need long-term relationships, feel stable, stability in your life. Yeah, so I think it's pretty important to those small things.
Yes, yes. This reminds me of a sitcom a long time ago. You might not have heard of Cheers, which is
I have.
this you have, so you know it.
Yeah.
So it's basically this pub in Boston, and there's this song at the beginning. You go to a place where everyone knows your name, right?
Yeah.
And there's a certain comfort in not having to explain yourself and reintroduce yourself every time you go and have a drink. And then
Yeah, so if you've got problems, you don't tell strangers. You tell people who you know and you connect with that you trust, and people can understand your history and stuff like that. So that's really important. Can I ask you then, how if does going to a pub and meeting people there regularly, or school friends from decades ago, whatever, can that replace having a life partner like a wife?
Um, no, but I'm just talking about long-term relationships in
I'm
general.
not saying that you're saying that. I'm just trying to, that I think a lot of somebody like E. Michael Jones would say all this Hollywood stuff and all the stuff on the movies, even these series like Cheers, they're actual propaganda. And the propaganda is you don't need to be married. You could just go to a pub and life would be great. That's enough. And so I think that's dangerous propaganda.
Yes, yes, because actually, that there's a lot of trouble in pub gossip, people fighting, people getting banned from pubs. you know. So, obviously, you shouldn't treat it as a kind of substitute for a real social circle. But people like the idea of having a local pub, and I guess the ideal is that you'd go to your local pub and there'll be sort of sensible, nice people who are normal that you can have a drink with without having to make an appointment with them, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So,
even conversations in the pub are rubbish. Like I've only gone to pubs for Christmas parties, and so people say stupid stuff that makes sense. They can't. I'm not sure, and I think there seems to be this thing where they spit a lot when they talk, when they're kind of half drunk because they've got less self control. It's like it's not. They're not good conversations, and the modern London pubs seem to be really noisy as well. So you can't even have a decent conversation. And a lot of the people I know who are not Muslims don't even like to talk in pubs. The ones who fellow teachers who came to these Christmas meetups. So
well,
not
yeah,
very
I
good
mean,
conversation.
it's sort of almost become political now. Like, do you want your pub to be safe for women and children? And of course, there would be all these men who say, "Well, I want to go to the pub and have a quiet pint and just sit there and nurse my pint because I'm a pensioner and I can't afford to be buying pints and pints and that all these children running around and making such a noise." So there should be different kinds of pubs for different kind of people. But obviously, it's not going to be worth your while if you can't sell them food, and then you have the horrible clink of cutlery in pubs, and then people don't want to stay where they can hear the clink of cutlery because they think we should go as soon as we're finished eating. I mean, I've seen pubs that change this atmosphere, have their entire atmosphere change. Once they decide we're going to concentrate on the food, the catering trade. But a lot of pubs are closing down. I
Yeah.
mean, Weatherspoons is really an institution, almost a charity, really, for people without a religious place of worship, right?
Mm.
So,
I mean, the only thing I used to hear of Weatherspoons was when I was a teenager and my friends would go to the pub, and their stories were so shameful and embarrassing. And that their idea of a fun day out would be somebody hits somebody, vomits over somebody else. They're like, anyway, I
hmm.
don't rate it at all.
Yeah, and the thing is, of course, a lot of them aren't able. They come to social media platforms drunk, and then they don't remember anything, and of course they can't organize any form of political activism if they're half drunk most of the time, and quite a lot of them do have drink problems and substance
Yeah.
abuse problems. So the Quranic warning against intoxication is relevant here. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a way of winding that up. And I'll take your point
I
about
wanted to say a
yeah,
few things
go
about
on,
E. Michael Jones, and I
go
mean,
for it.
obviously, to give you advance publicity,
Yeah,
he said in his book Libido Dominandi, which is Latin for um, our appetite
sexual
dominating
appetite.
us. Um,
Okay, yeah,
so he's basically saying, the well, I guess the seven deadly sins. We there's lust, there's greed, there's gluttony, and all the and Ian Michael Jones says we have as many masters as we have vices. And I guess the Quran would have the effect of regulating our desire for these things, so it doesn't, go out of control. I mean, even the Quran has a nuanced approach to alcohol, because there's a verse that's quite liberal saying, "Don't come to prayer so drunk you don't know the meaning of words," and then there's another verse that says, you better avoid it altogether. But at least you can argue about the interpretation, and obviously even now in British pubs, publicans are not allowed to sell alcohol to somebody already drunk. They could lose their license. So, I mean, there was always some idea of controlling, people's drinking habits. And of course,
Yeah,
it's still a crime to be drunk and disorderly and drunk in public and that kind of thing.
that's really funny considering, the people just hand out alcohol so easily nowadays, and I mean not nowadays, but always in the UK. If I was to wind up some ideas, and you can summarize your own thoughts as well in a minute. Continuing from this idea of what E. Michael Jones was saying, like um, there's the 7 deadly sins and all this kind of stuff, and lusting over people is one of those deadly sins, I believe. Um, you don't have to worry about a lot of those problems if you're fulfilled, if you have your human needs met within marriage. So I would say um, Islam generally, or religion generally, makes life really easy. And so adopt marriage to fulfill your needs easily so you can become really successful and proud of yourself and have legacy and have meaning in your life, like raising children so that they raising children that are good so that you can be proud, or you can feel that you left something behind. These are all human needs, and they're easily met when you adopt the system, the religious system. If you want freedom, you're just getting freedom from the system that's designed to help you. So don't fall for the propaganda that freedom is going to make you happy. It's not. The system is designed to make you happy, and it gives you a lot of freedom within the system. So you get to have loads more sex. People who are married have way more sex than people who are not. So yeah, it's all positives, but you kind of have to be a little bit patient, I guess. Not maybe quite a lot patient. I don't know, to get the benefits of these systems like marriage. What are your closing thoughts?
Well, when I was younger, I didn't see the point of marriage, but I suppose the whole reason for encouraging people to get married is that you kind of force them, you funnel them into the path of marriage, so that even if they were at the time reluctant, after maybe a few decades of a good marriage and reasonably good children, you're glad you did it after all, even if you can say, "Oh, well, at the time I wasn't really sure, but I'm glad I did it." It's that kind of idea, I guess.
Yeah, maybe forcing sounds bad, but although Islam gives religious freedom, I get the idea and I agree with it in many ways that human beings are really bad at making choices. So the fewer choices you give people, the better for them. So yeah, if you say adultery, you're going to get whipped or something. So then you have to get married. That would just make your life better. You just end up just getting married and having more sex, and problem solved anyway. Cool. All right. Thank you very much, Claire. Really appreciate it. Loads of great ideas from you, as always. And hopefully I'll have you on again. We're going to have a more of a routine having you on more often.
Yeah. Well, thank
Thank
you for having me, and I look forward very much to your conversation with E. Michael Jones, who is seeking a Christian-Muslim alliance.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. All right.
Yes.
Take care. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Get well soon. Bye.
Thank you.